wow, full room. This is so good to see. Welcome, everybody. This is open source in the age of AI. I'm so excited to have everybody here. And let's start by saying hello to our guests. So we have here with us today Guido van Rossum. Guido van Rossum. Samuel Colvin.
Hi there.
Sebastián Ramírez.
Hello.
And Jeremiah.
Everybody.
I mean, come on, they deserve claps. Very good. So I'm going to start, then I'm going to let you introduce yourselves like super quick. Do you want to just do a quick round of introductions? What are you doing right now? Who are you? Jeremiah, if you'd like to go first.
I just introduced myself to about half of this room in my talk. So for the other half, I'm Jeremiah. I'm the CEO and founder at Prefect. I'm the author of FastMCP. My open source career is about 2 decades long at this point, always in ML data and some kind of Pythonic interface, and it's amazing to be here.
Thank you. Sebastián?
I'm Sebastián Ramírez, or Triangulo. I created FastAPI and a bunch of other projects. I'm building FastAPI Cloud with a bunch of very cool people that I have some here. That's pretty much it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Samuel. I originally created Pydantic. Now I run Pydantic, the company. And thanks to AI, it is now trendy again for CEOs to write code. So I'm allowed to, well, at least tend Claude's to write code, if not actually write very much of it myself. Although actually, secretly, I do actually write it, but I get to say that's cool because that's trendy again.
All right. Same for me, actually. I'm probably twice as old as the average of the three of you. I represent the older generation. I didn't do anything with AI, didn't invent it, but I invented a language that apparently seems to steer a lot of it. So I think I haven't seen a single example that wasn't in Python so far.
Which is good, because this is a Python conference. So we're safe, everybody. We're safe. Very good. So you were... I'm going to start with you then with the questions, because I think everybody wants to hear a little bit more from you. OK, so you created Python. Yes, you mentioned. You stepped back from the benevolent dictator for life role after the walrus operator situation. Mm-hmm. And it's been a while now. So do you want to tell everybody what you've been working on? How's life? What are you doing?
I'm still part-time employed, basically because it pays for my medical insurance. I'm at Microsoft. Well, first, for 4 years, I worked with a team of 5 or 6 people on making CPython faster. That was a fantastic time. I sort of grew out of that project, and then since a year and a half or so, I've been noodling around with AI without really understanding what I'm doing. But many of the talks that I've seen so far resonate very much. We're all doing the same thing, basically.
Perfect. So I heard you're working on a project called TypeAgent, right?
Yes, that's what I meant with noodling around.
OK. And what does it do?
It is supposed to be the core engine for long-term agent memory. And the agent is fed messages that could be you just chatting with a model about anything, really, or together building something. Every interaction gets fed into the agent. The agent doesn't just store the text for later retrieval using RAG. Instead, the agent actually sends the interaction to a model which extracts knowledge. It sort of finds key activities, entities, people, things, concepts. And those extracted entities are stored together with the raw text in a database. We then query the database not through RAG, but just by looking for entities with specific properties or names or what have you, facets. And then sort of the database, the output of the database query is fed to a model that turns it into a nice answer to the user's original question.
Okay, nice. And actually, Samuel told me that you've been using pydantic-ai and pydantic-logfile. So,
yeah, a little bit. I was quickly sold on Pydantic for anything that needed to be serialized. And we have some requirement that we want to be able to serialize everything that's in the database in a SQL independent form. So that's where we use Pydantic. And then most recently, with the help of Claude, we converted the entire code base so that instead of having hard-coded support for OpenAI and Azure OpenAI, Azure separately, mostly because all the auth is different, now retaining the Azure auth support, we can use pydantic-ai's naming scheme for provider : model. And I'm very glad. I waited. I had wanted that for a long time, but I had to wait until there was also embedding support. And the day that the embedding support landed, I started looking at this for real.
nice. Yeah, he actually told me this over dinner last night, so I'm biased. Do you want to say anything about it? We have plenty to discuss, so if you don't...
Let's move on.
Let's move on. Awesome. Perfect. So we are now then going to talk a little bit about problems. I've been worried with the situation with AI slop. I don't know if Swix is here, but if he is, no more slop. It's a really good chat to have. But the situation with the matplotlib maintainer that was shamed by an autonomous bot for having its PR closed, the curl bounty program being closed as well due to AI slopness being submitted. It worries me because, well, open source is based on this gift economy, and we need to keep the door open so that the gifts come back. I know that FastAPI and CPython have some policies put in place for AI sloppiness. But most recently, GitHub also decided to roll out a feature where you can basically close the ability to have PRs open on your repository. We all know this is a problem. We're kind of tired of, discussing the problem. So I'm going to look at each one of you as very powerful people in the open source, and I would like to hear solutions. So
I'll go first.
Great.
I think GitHub has a massive opportunity to help the open source community, and if they don't, there is an enormous opportunity to supplant GitHub. They need to have human and AI identity. It is not going to be perfect. It is not going to work out of the box. You can't simply say people using the web interface are humans and people using the CLI or the API are bots, because there are contradictions. But I think you could get an awful long way with both an honesty-based system of is this human or is this AI, and then with using AI to detect when that's not the case, and then with reputation on people, so that if you basically have a metric on your GitHub profile, which is how sloppy is the code you submit. Sloppy in the sense of those big PRs that come in. Look, I will say that Monty, which I'm going to talk about later, is arguably a slop fork of CPython. That is not true because it's not a fork. The slop bit has some truth to it. I'll explain why that is. Do come to my talk. But I think that there is enormous opportunity for AI-generated code. The problem is when people are submitting stuff which they are claiming. Basically, they generate loads of code. They send it to me. They expect me to go and read this 10,000 lines of code they haven't read. So the obvious place we want to get to is you can submit AI-generated code if you either tell me it is all AI-generated or have read it yourself and think it is right. As in, you don't expect someone else to be the first person to read your code. And I think that GitHub can make that happen. They just need to pull their finger out and think about how to make it happen.
OK, thank you for that.
Sure.
Good. Who would like to go next?
Are we in turns?
So how do you follow that? I think it's helpful to like subset the problem a little bit. So I don't think it's just AI, right? If AI is not allowed to make PRs, then every PR I've made in the last 2 years can't work. It's really when we're getting such a volume of AI submitted PRs that are not conducive to the project, and that's really tough. I also think it's not necessarily a new skill, though, right? Open source maintainers have always had to find ways to say no. It's been really important to sort of protect the project. It's really the problem is that it used to be that opening the PR was the hurdle, the friction to participation, and it was hard to do. So you didn't get PRs except for someone who was deeply motivated to contribute, and then you can have a nice conversation. Yeah. Now the cost of opening the PR has gone to zero. Yes. And so I think that's really where I think about this. I wrote a blog post that was momentarily viral last fall called an open source maintainer's guide to saying no, and in it I just tried to explore what can one actually do from a process standpoint, short of waiting if GitHub wants to solve this problem for us, that's great. What can one do from a process standpoint? We tried some things on the FastMCP repo. We tried requiring an issue to be opened before a PR could be opened. What happened is the issue would be opened 1 second before the PR would be opened. We tried saying you need to interact with the maintainer. I just moved the burden to the issues page instead of to the PR page. Yes. I think at some point the most effective thing we did is we said PRs will be closed if they're too long, if the description is too long, because LLMs have this weird insistence on telling you everything they did, even though the code is right there. That actually has been the most effective thing. It's a heuristic. It's not a rule. It will be dead in 3 months. But one of the best things we did is we created like I think it's like too long is the label. And we just slap it on a PR that's just too long. If it took you that long, there's something is...
Too long description? Or
literally too long a description. Yeah, not code.
Okay.
10,000 lines of code with a 5-line description, I'll dig in. But a 10,000-line description for 5 lines of code and you're out. And that's been a heuristic that's actually worked. And that's as close as I have to a solution is like, how do we just move the process? What I'd love to do is short of an AI detection system. You remember there were these proposals for stopping spam in email by making a computer like do a little microsecond like computation before it sent a message. And the idea was you couldn't send 10,000 messages because you'd have to pay this tax, this non-monetary tax. I would love to find a constructive friction to introduce into the PR process, not so onerous that it would deter any person who's pouring disproportionately more time into actually solving a problem in the code, but enough to deter just like this rote sloppiness.
Okay.
Sebastián, you've dealt with way too many issues and pull requests for years. Is it getting worse, or are you just like more of the same?
Way worse. Just don't tell your open cloud thingies to write small descriptions because we are screwed then.
Yeah, then we're done. That's the only thing we have.
Yeah, I think a good thing to think about is that it becomes a problem of distributed denial of service, of maintainer attention, time, and effort. When a bunch of people can put a bunch of bots to say like, hey, go and check this repository and find like any issue or any discussion and make a PR to solve whatever it is that they said, the effort that that person has to make is tiny. And then this creates a PR that will consume days of reviewing. And then it's just like the imbalance of the effort needed for that is just crazy. And then it's just like, it's putting maintainers to consume CPU cycles like crazy. And this is, it becomes a denial of service attack that is not intentional, it's like, of course, we're all trying to help. And it's like, okay, maybe I could use this new tool to help. But when it's easier for the maintainer to go and write the same prompt and see what is the output, that's actually going to be a lot easier to review, to handle, and to see what happens than reviewing, like a 1,000-line code PR. Also, because there's also this additional thing that is not necessarily too spoken about, and this the security, that if I write a prompt and I make the thing create a long PR, I know that at least it was whatever was output from the LLM. But if someone submits a PR, I don't have any certainty that it was actually just generated by an LLM. Someone could send a very long PR and then sneak in some crypto mining something, or I don't know. And like, you know, like I have to review each PR super thoroughly, independent of who wrote it. So, you know, like it's like this imbalance of effort that makes things super, super difficult.
There's a good documentary about the XZ vulnerability that nearly got introduced to Debian, where the code that they used to go and whatever it was, basically inject their own password into OpenSSH was encoded in a binary blob of data that they were saying was an example of compression. So obviously it was a compression library, so you have all these random blobs that you demonstrate the compression is working for, and they had the code inside that binary blob so no one would notice it. And one of the things they say in that documentary is, it is weird how few supply chain attacks we've discovered, e.g. probably there are more, we just haven't found yet. And I've been like waiting for it to happen for years. I've had some issues where I have refused to accept PRs because I won't go into the details publicly, but like there were just too many smells. And it's very hard to say, look, you don't have a suitable public profile and what you're doing is scary enough, I won't merge it, but like you kind of got to. And I still think we're waiting for the real supply chain. Maybe if XZ had been let loose, it would have actually been good, because it would have been it might have knocked out entire healthcare systems, but it would have reset us all and realized we need new answers to this.
Yeah.
But then, what's the weight of the policy in that? Like,
I think we need this like federated reputation thing where you can use up a bit of reputation when you submit a PR and you get a bit back when it gets merged. And like that reputation, I don't want it to live only with one big company, but maybe it's better for it to live with Microsoft, e.g. GitHub, than no one. But it would be best if it was federated. But then every time you submit a like 10,000 line PR, you use up a little bit of your reputation, you get it back when it's merged. Yeah, well, now I get that profile when I'm reviewing a PR. That's the like, it's a start, right?
Yeah. The new economy of open source.
I think it's interesting, but I also think it ties into, I think as maintainers, we also have an obligation to bring people into open source, right? I hope folks here, especially this is a Python conference, I hope folks here are contributing to open source to some degree. It's a really wonderful thing. It's a chance to learn a lot. I can think of in the projects that I've, I guess, been apprenticed to as a more junior maintainer, I got to watch amazing people cultivate open source communities. I learned a lot from that. And so I think one of the challenges to solve in any of these frictions that we introduce constructively is we have to make sure that we still have a path for folks to come into open source so it doesn't devolve into, really transactional and credentials, right? And it's almost like a credit score. It's like you build credit on a certain credit card, and then maybe now you can contribute to FastAPI.
I worry a bit about putting a gate on that, though. One of the beauties of open source is that it's open for everybody. Yes.
So we have in Pydantic, we have this thing we call Big Cheese, where we basically have a Chrome extension that inserts a summary of who someone is and where they work, and it gives them a brutal 1 to 5 score on how valuable they might be as a customer. I know it sounds offensive, but we did it because we had an issue submitted on Pydantic by one of the OpenAI founders, and one of us was critical of it and closed it. And after that, we were like, okay, we can't carry on doing this. And so we have this thing that inserted, but it's pure credentialism because we don't have the means to go and do how good is this person's code, but you could imagine that could exist.
But then beginners. I'm sorry, you would like to wait on that?
Well, yeah, I've been listening to this. CPython is a very big, very well-known project. We try to put sort of barriers in place. Like we also require an issue for every PR except for typos. And we don't actually like PRs that fix typos. Unless the typos are particularly sort of in your face when you're reading the docs. But typos in a comment, we just close that usually. And so we've seen over the past couple decades so many different ways that people try to sort of sneak a PR in to Python in the hope that it gets accepted so that they can put on their little resume Python contributor. No, seriously, that seems to be very often what happens.
I fixed a typo.
So AI isn't even all that different. We get plenty of PRs that are not AI generated and are also annoying, like just people opens the new issue form, doesn't fill out any of the fields and hit commit, submit.
Yep.
Fortunately, those are easy for the triagers, and we are fortunate to have a large community of triagers and core devs who do the triage together, and Those people have a lot of experience in sort of catching all kinds of abusive PRs. And yeah, they had to think about what are we going to do about AI, and there's sort of a policy that's forming where we say, well, it's okay to use AI tools. It's not okay to submit a PR that has no sign of a human actually being involved. This usually appears very quickly when we ask a question about a PR, like, why did you do this?
Yep.
Or what does this actually do? There's no response. And then we label it as pending, and after 2 weeks we close it. It's mostly a manual process as far as I know, but...
You see, that's a really good hook for our next question, which is about code reviews. Well, we have AI tools producing code. It's
Can I
yes?
jump on the previous question just for a second?
Sure. I mean, of course.
One thing that I am doing that I think like is something that can be adopted by everyone contributing is, of course, I use a bunch of AI to do a lot of the work. Now, when I make a PR to another project, I started writing long descriptions before AI was the fad. Before I was the hipster like that. But then now I write a section where when I open a PR, I write a section with an AI disclaimer saying I use this model or this combination of models. Here's the full prompt and the full discussion. Normally in an HTML details so that it doesn't render right away. You can just like click it and then you can read the whole thing. What was my whole conversation with the LLM thing? And the other thing is the switching perspective of like, my intention is not to be a contributor to this thing, to say like, I am a contributor now because like I made the LLM do something. I want the problem to be solved. I want the thing to be solved. So it's like, look, this is what I did. This is the prompts and the things that I used. It's quite probable that it will be better for you just to replicate what I did and create another PR and just do it. And that's totally fine by me. I don't need my PR to be accepted. I want this problem to be solved. This is how I'm approaching it. And I'm just like opening the full disclaimer of this is what I used, this is what I did. So it's like easier for the person to say like, what is it that I'm actually reviewing? What is the human input in this? What is this person asking to solve? How did this person wanted to solve the thing? And the code becomes secondary.
I wouldn't click on that button. I would just read your personal description of why you want it, why you need it. Of course, you have some reputation, so you don't have to worry that you're mistaken for a spammer. And then I would just read the code, and if the code is overwhelming, I put it off.
and I will be super happy about it. I will be glad, like, okay, this is just bringing attention to like this thing that maybe could be done. And I will be completely fine and like actually happy if you just like write the prompt yourself and probably do it slightly different with a lot of extra context that you have and figure out how to solve it.
Sorry, Laís, I'm carrying on the previous subject.
It's okay. We have a little bit of time. Go.
I think if we accept the like currently slightly hyperbolic take that Python and dare I say it, TypeScript and Rust are becoming the intermediate representation, and it's now the like markdown description or the plan that is the high-level language. We're definitely not in a place like some of those AI companies are claiming, where like all that we have is the like description, the spec, and then the code is ephemeral. We definitely want to keep that code because it's not like generating assembly from C or where you can do it completely repeatedly. But like you can imagine, you get to the point where your pull request is actually just the plan, and then you let the maintainer or GitHub go and run that, and now we have a defensible, okay, well this was the plan, and then this is what we got out, and so we know at least that it, like, if you read the plan, that it has at least tried to do the honorable thing.
I will say I love when I get a well-scoped issue that I can send one of my agents with my skills, with my preference to just go implement that plan. That will get merged so much faster than a giant PR that I have to go review and put myself in a different headspace.
So then it's the shift from creating the code to creating the plan and reviewing the plan. Because my next question is actually going to be, how do you review 10,000 lines of code if you're the human behind the screen actually looking at that?
I have an answer, but I don't want to dominate. As someone who has merged some 10,000 line PRs, so there are like 4 rules, I think, where where if these are met, AI accelerates you by like 10 or 20x rather than 3 or 5x. And they are, the internals of the implementation are kind of known to the model. It's in its soul, in its weights. The external interface is known by the models. You don't have to explain it. The unit tests either exist or are easy to generate. And there's no bike shedding about what that interface is because it already exists. So you think about people building like clones of Redis, which is a kind of like almost a meme at this point. All 4 of those rules are met, and so you can go and produce a clone of Redis that would have taken a good engineer years before in a matter of hours now, because all of the unit tests just do the same thing as Redis. It knows what the interface to Redis is. You don't have to bike shed about what the messages are. You know exactly what they need to be. And that's why Monty is possible, is because those 4 rules apply. Guido and others have gone and developed this like wonderful language that I'm just going and making a slightly different take on, but I don't need to work out the semantics or the interface. And so I think one of the other things is if you have those rules, then you can have these enormous PRs where you can have an AI review them and then merge them without reading the code because it's fully tested and the interface is not disputed. But those are the exception, not the rule of code.
But not all security vulnerabilities can be cached by doing that.
True.
So there is a blast radius still. So how do we keep humans being relevant on reviewing PRs with 10, 20, 50,000 lines of code?
I would much rather sort of co-develop that PR from small beginnings with occasionally bursts of code written by a model but carefully reviewed then, so that the typical mistakes that the models make, like, they like to clean up the code surrounding where they're rooting around, and now the PR is much bigger because there's all this irrelevant cleanup or reindentation or whatever happening. And if you actually work with another person who is a real contributor and you sort of develop it together, you don't have to be pair programming, but sort of a back and forth between 2 humans leads, in my view, in a case like Python, which is intentionally moving rather slowly, leads to much better sort of sanity in the project than accepting 10,000 PRs. That whether those 10,000 lines were written by a human who did a couple of all-nighters or by an AI doesn't even matter so much. That if someone confronts you with 10,000 lines of code, I find it real hard to believe that those are the right 10,000 lines of code.
But CPython is...
And I think these people all would much more easily believe that because they think about using the tools themselves.
Yeah.
But I'm sort of old-fashioned for something as important as Python, where if we screw up, we introduce a bug into everybody's systems.
Yes, 100%. But, not everybody is CPython. So then focusing on, we have smaller projects, we have projects that need to move fast. Then how do we do that? How do we make code review relevant, effective, good for projects that need to move much faster than CPython? Any takers?
I mean, I think it's very tempting to keep using the 10,000 line as the epitome of what's wrong. But the truth is most PRs are 5 lines of code, 20 lines of code, whatever they are, maybe generated by an LLM, maybe not. And I think they still take up as much mental burden to review. And so I really think it's about whether it's an LLM or not, and like genuinely not caring for a second, I think it's about creating an environment where explaining the code is of paramount importance, right? Just if the description is clear and the code is 6 lines of code, then I will take the time to review it and it will go in. And it's about, I think it's about a mutual trying to reduce the burden, which is not new in open source. It's just that we've so tipped the scale on where you can get an advantage, which is in the code production now. And so I think when you see, look, if someone has their LLM write me a little description on a little PR, wonderful, great. I don't care that it's an LLM. The code is the code at the end of the day. I don't care who wrote it. We're not going to discriminate. It's when it takes a disproportionate burden. And so I think it's about, frankly, just creating that culture, and it's a conversation, and it's why I think open source and community kind of go hand in hand to some degree. And it's a little tougher with LLMs of what it means to have a community, right? So a really clear agents.md or Claude.md or your README changes a little bit in the age of AI. You're trying to find ways to sort of create the conventions by which your repo operates, and I'm sure everyone's is different, right? Mine is different than anybody.
I agree, but I also think, I mean, we're not talking, none of us are talking about the bleeding edge of what it looks like to build with AI, right? OpenClaw is, I think Armin told me 1.4 million lines of code written in a matter of months. That is like I imagine, massively more than CPython. Like, it's a very different league that they're in terms of, you can think of a league in good or league in bad, but or you could just think of it as a completely different thing that they're doing, but it's a very, very different take to pydantic or FastAPI or FastMCP or CPython or any of the stuff we're doing. And I think, I'm not sure I had a particular point there, other than that there are people doing far more crazy things.
They don't have any backward compatibility requirements.
No.
If their shit changes tomorrow or next week or in 2 weeks, nobody cares.
And they're almost embracing it's insecure by design. I mean, that's sort of the point, right? It's it can do everything on your machine, so there's no such thing as security. It's effectively Peter's take, right?
Its objective is to be a kitchen sink.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the things that I think would defend a PR, a technically good PR may get rejected from a project that is human curated because it doesn't comply with the ethos of the project, right? It doesn't advance the project's goals, even if it's good code. I hope that's not a controversial thing to say. I got yelled at once on Hacker News for saying that. Big surprise.
No matter what you say, Hacker News will yell.
But I think that these large projects, part of what they're trying to do is just absorb every piece of functionality.
Yeah.
And you give over to that. I don't know. I build very horizontal frameworks. I guess we all do up here. But it's different building a horizontal framework that is in abstractions horizontal than doing something that is in its implementations horizontal. And I think that's where the other million lines of code come from, maybe.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So next, because we're almost at time.
Oh, sorry, Liz.
And this is, please, don't apologize. We're all having fun. It's all good. But I really want to ask this question. Python is fundamental to AI, is foundational. In your opinion, how should companies, large companies that offer LLMs invest back in open source?
They could do what Anthropic did. They donated $1.5 million to the PSF.
So money is one answer, indeed.
Well, because that money mostly goes to security developers and researchers, so that we can ensure that Python is secure in places that don't just show in the code base, but also in the whole ecosystem around it.
Which is impacting important. Indeed.
I have to mention the pledge set up by Sentry originally, where companies agree to donate $2,000 per year per engineer to open source. I think Prefect's a member, I think, strongly encourage companies to do it. There is no scale at which $2,000 per engineer isn't possible if you have the right mindset. But mostly today, it is startups doing it. If the Googles or I'm looking at Jason, OpenAI got involved. I introduced Jason to the pledge the other day, so he's fighting the good fight. But if big companies went and did that, that could make a profound difference. So that's one part of it. They can also go buy products like Logfire built by great open source or open source maintainers. slight ad. Go on.
Yeah. I think companies just have an obligation to subsidize the most expensive parts of open source, which is sometimes money, but more often is like time and space and meetups and food and things like that. If anyone here wants to ever come visit the wonderful tech scene of Washington, D.C., where I live, one of the things that we've done is we've taken Prefect's conference facilities and everything. We've just opened it up to any Python or data open source meetup in the city. They can come, they can reserve our spot, we'll get the food, we'll give them the space, we'll take care of it. And it's just like, that's the sort of thing. I remember when I was organizing meetups, that was the worst, finding a place and finding food. It doesn't take much. It takes a couple of pizzas, right? Yeah. It's not crazy, but there's logistics, there's overhead, there's coordination, and
security.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Yeah, we used to have things like that at Google. Google hosted early Bay Piggies meetings in Silicon Valley for years, and eventually they stopped because they wouldn't let strangers in their building after hours anymore. That was just like the physical security team was too uncomfortable with that.
Yeah,
that was the end.
There are conflicts, there are tensions, but there are little things like that, or sponsor. The pledge is wonderful. We try to give our team some budget that they can donate to open source projects that they use or don't use or like or don't like, whatever, for whatever cause, just at their discretion. Just being involved in creating a healthy community, I think is.
And Sebastián, do you want to say your final remarks?
I have 8 seconds. Yay!
I mean, make the most of it.
I totally say, I totally agree that money helps a lot because money buys time and effort from the people that need to do the work. It sounds, I don't know, too commercial or something, but it's really important. In many cases, something that I think is not thought about a lot is regulations and the way laws are written and the way lawyers think about things is very enclosed and very anti-open source, and lawyers don't know about open source, and it's super weird. But like standard startup tech, California laws, whatever, are very restrictive of, no, if you write any character of code, it belongs to a company, you cannot do open source, and it's super limiting. And just because people are just like abiding by whatever the lawyer told them, like they normally just like follow along. Like, okay, you cannot just like do open source because like we will get in a problem and we will have to talk to lawyers and we don't want to do that. But if there was anyone that has like any connections with lawyers or could figure out a way to make it easier to do, that would actually be super helpful, because for companies it will be much, much cheaper to get like 1 day a week for a few of their employees to work on the open source tools that they are using than waiting for those tools to go stale and deprecated and having to do a massive migration that is going to break production. So like being able to find the different ways to just like inject support to the systems. I think that will
talk to Mozilla. They have open source knowledgeable lawyers and have had them for 25 years.
Point. Nice.
I'm surprised to hear this actually, because that was the state of the art like around the turn of the century.
Yeah. I fight with my lawyer so much.
I thought it got much better, but
yeah.
Is it in Germany or here?
No, here.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, we're at time. I am so sorry to interrupt this lovely discussion, but thank you so much, and that's it. Well, contribute to open source, everybody. No more slop. No more slop. No more